Hello everyone, my name is Mons. I am a software engineer at Keyfactor. In this video, I'm going to go through how you can set up a PKI for Matter IoT. As a product vendor in the Matter ecosystem, you would need a PKI like this to issue certificates for your Matter compliant IoT devices. To be compliant with Matter, you need to follow the document called PKI Certificate Policy, which contains all the standards. That document will be linked in the description below, but this video will give you the basics that you need to get started setting up a Matter PKI. Note that this video will not be covering best security practices for a production environment, so refer to further EJBCA documentation for that, but we will be covering how to get started with a Matter PKI. So a Matter PKI has three main components. There is the Product Attestation Authority, which is the root CA. There are the Product Attestation Intermediates. These are the PAIs, and the PAIs will in turn issue the certificates that goes into the IoT devices. And in Matter, these certificates are known as Device Attestation Certificates, DACs. So this video is going to cover all three of these components. We're going to use EJBCA to set up a PAA. We're going to use another EJBCA instance to also set up a PAI. Then we're going to prepare what we need to start issuing the DACs. And then we're going to issue our first DAC. To follow along with this tutorial, you would need to have Docker installed on your machine, and we will also be using OpenSSL to emulate our IoT device when we issue our first DAC. You can find more information about these tools in the description below. So the first thing we need is to fetch the Docker image of the EJBCA Community Edition. You can do that using the following command. All of these commands are available in the tutorial description, which you can find below. So we're going to run EJBCA containerized for this tutorial. Now I have already run this command, so the next step is to use docker run to actually start the container. And there are a few things worth noting here. I'm using TLS setup enabled simple. This should never be used in a production environment, but we're doing it to keep this video simple and focused on Matter. Then I'm mapping ports from my local machine into the container. So I'm mapping port 28080 on my machine into port 8080 in the container. And I'm mapping port 28443 to port 8443 in the container. The port on the left side here is the one I use on my machine, and that there you can use whatever you want as long as you remember what you're using. And at the end of the command, it's going to look a bit different for me, since at the time of making this video, the latest version EJBCA Community Edition 8.0 is not out yet, but for you there will be EJBCA Community Edition here at the end. So we're going to go ahead and run this command, and starting up the container takes a little while, so I'm going to fast forward a bit. So once you can see a message that looks something like this, mentioning a fresh installation, you know that the container is ready. So now I'm going to move to my web browser. I'm going to go to the URL localhost, since I'm running this on my local machine. And then here is the port number that I mapped from my local machine to the port 8443 in the container. And then /EJBCA/adminweb. I'm going to go there. And here I'm getting a warning, and this is because we're using TLS setup simple. And accept and continue. So now we have a fresh EJBCA instance running in a container, and this is going to become our PAA. So the first thing I want to do is go and create a crypto token. So find crypto tokens here in the left menu, click create new. I'm going to name this one PAA and type in an authentication code. In a real setting, this should be a very safe passcode. Click save. And now we are going to create the keys that our PAA is going to use. And to comply with the Matter standard, the type we're going to use is EJBCA P256. And we want one named sign key. Click generate. Gonna create one named test key. Click generate again. And one named encrypt key. So sign key is the key that is actually going to be used in the PKI. Encrypt key and test key are used internally by EJBCA. So now we have all of the keys that we need. So our next step is to create a certificate profile. So find certificate profiles here in the left menu. And since our PAA is the root CA of our PKI, I'm going to clone the pre-existing certificate profile called root CA. So click clone there and name this new certificate profile PAA. Click create from template. And here find PAA in the list and click edit. So for available key algorithms, we want EJBCA. For the available EJBCA curves, I'm going to select P256. For signature algorithm, I'm going to select SHA-256 with EJBCA. And for validity, I'm going to select 10 years, 10Y. And for subject alternative name, I'm going to uncheck that one. I'm also going to uncheck sub-issuer alternative name. And a bit further down, I'm also going to uncheck LDAP DN order. And now the profile is ready, so click save. And the next step is to create the actual CA. So go to Certification Authorities in the left menu. Under Add CA, we're going to name it PAA and click Create. And for our crypto token, we're going to select the one that we created earlier, named PAA. And for our subject DN, I'm gonna call this one my PAA. I'm gonna add VID FFF1. So the vendor ID here, VID, is a Matter specific component that we need. And validity, 10 years. And also I'm gonna find LDAP DN order here and uncheck that one. Now we are ready to create the PAA. So click create at the bottom. And now we're gonna want to download the certificate for our PAA. So in the left menu at the bottom, find RA Web. At the top, find CA certificates and CRLs. And here we see PAA in the list. Where it says certificate, click the link called PEM. So we have now downloaded the certificate of our PAA in a PEM format. So now we want to prepare for our PAI, our sub-CA. So we can close the RA web for now. And now we can go back to certificate profiles. So click certificate profiles in the left menu. And since the PAI is very similar to the PAA, we can clone the PAA certificate profile that we created earlier. So click clone on that one. Name this new one PAI. Click create from template. Find PAI in the list here. Click edit. And the main difference between the PAA and the PAI is the type. So for the type, we're going to change it here to sub-CA. And we're also going to go down to validity, enter 10 years. And then we are done. So scroll down to the bottom and select save. Now we're going to want to create an end entity profile as well. So find end entity profiles in the left menu. Here, create one named PAI. Click add profile. Click it in the list. Click edit. For end entity email, we're going to uncheck this one. And scroll down to subject DN attributes. We're going to add Matter VID. Find it in the list, click add. We're also going to add Matter PID. For Matter VID, I'm going to click select that it is required, and I'm going to uncheck modifiable. Here, I'm going to enter FFF1. So FFF1 is an example vendor ID that is used in the Matter documentation as well. And for PID, I'm going to check required, but I'm going to leave it as modifiable. So this profile is going to be for the vendor that has an ID FFF1, assuming that we want to create PAIs only for one vendor, which would be the normal use case. So we're also going to want to select our default certificate profile here, PAI, available certificate profiles, PAI. For default CA, select PAA, available CAs, select PAA as well. And for available tokens, I'm going to select user generated. Scroll down and click save. And now we're going to go in the left menu and click add end entity. End entity profile, select PAI. For username, I'm going to say my PAI. And for a password, enter whatever you want, but make sure you remember it. And for a common name, I'm going to say my PAI. VID is FFF1. Product ID, I'm going to say 8000. So this is also an example product ID that is used in the Matter documentation. So now we are ready to click add. So now what we've done is we've created the PAA and we've done the preparation that we need to create our PAI, our sub-CA. So I'm going to go back to the terminal. The container that we have up and running for the PAA, I'm not going to touch that one, but in a new terminal window, I'm going to start up a second container, which is going to become our PAI. So the command is the Docker run command, just the same as the one we ran before, but with one important difference, and that is the port numbers that I'm using on my local machine. So the important thing is that these ports cannot be the same as the one we used before. So now they start with a 3 here, instead of a 2. So I'm going to run this command, and it's going to take a little while to start up the container. So I'm going to fast forward a bit. So once you see the message about a fresh installation, the container is ready. So I'm going to go back to the web browser, and the URL for the new container is going to be very similar, but the difference is the port number here. You get a warning again. I want to continue. So now we have a new fresh EJBCA instance running in a container, and this is going to become the PAI. So the first thing I want to do is I want to import the PAA. So go to Certification Authorities and click Import CA Certificate. The name will be PAA. Click Browse. And now I'm going to select the certificate for the PAA that we downloaded previously. So do that and click Import CA Certificate. So now this new EJBCA instance is aware of the PAA. We have imported it as an external CA. So the next thing is we want to create the keys that our PAI is going to use. We're going to go to Crypto Tokens and click Create New. Name this one PAI. Enter an authentication code. Now we're going to generate keys. And again, we want ECDSA P256. We want to create one named sign key, one named test key, and one named encrypt key. So it's just the same as last time. And now we have the keys that we need. So now we're going to go to Certification Authorities. In the Add CA field, I'm going to type in PAI, click Create, and we will select the crypto token that we just created. And for subject DN, call it my PAI, use the vendor ID FFF1, product ID 8000, and here where it says signed by, I'm going to select external CA since this is a sub CA, and I'm going to uncheck LDAP DN order and scroll down to the bottom and click make certificate request. So now we get a certificate request here. I'm going to copy this string to the clipboard and click back to Certificate Authorities. So now we have the PAI here waiting for certificate response. So since this is a sub CA to the PAA, we need the PAA to sign the certificate of our PAI. So I'm going to go back to the admin web of the PAA, the original container. And here I will go to RA web at the bottom and go to enroll, select use username. So now we're going to use the end entity that we created before for our PAI. And the username was my PAI. The password is the one that you hopefully remember from before. Click check. And here in this text field, I can paste the certificate request that we just copied. So now all we need to do is download PEM. We have our certificate for our PAI. And this is the sub CA. So now we can go back to the most recent container, the PAI. And here in the list, we see PAI waiting for certificate response. So click that one, click edit CA. Scroll down to the bottom again, and where it says step 2 import certificate here under externally signed CA, we're going to click browse, And we're gonna select the PAI certificate that we just downloaded. And then we can click Receive Certificate Response. So now we see this message, certificate response received successfully. And we can see here that the PAI is now active. So now we have set up our PAA and we have set up our PAI. What remains is to prepare to start issuing the device certificates, the DACs. So the first thing to do is to create a certificate profile. I'm going to clone the one called end user. Name this one DAC. Find it in the list and click Edit. And from available key algorithms, select EJBCA. For the available curves, we want P256. For signature algorithm, select SHA-256 with EJBCA. For key usages, I'm going to uncheck non-repudiation and key encipherment, and I'm also going to uncheck extended key usage. And here, under extensions, I'm going to uncheck subject alternative name as well as issuer alternative name. And I also want to uncheck LDAP-D in order. For available CAs, I'm going to select PAI and click Save. Now we also want an end entity profile for the devices, so go to End Entity Profiles, add one named DAC, click Add Profile, click it in the list, click Edit, uncheck End Entity Email, and for subject DN attributes, we're going to add Matter VID and Matter PID again. And for these, I'm going to make them both required, but I'm going to uncheck modifiable for both of them. So I'm assuming this profile now is going to be used for one specific product. So therefore we can enter our vendor ID, FFF1, as well as our PID 8000. And now we want to select our default certificate profile, DAC, and available certificate profiles, DAC. Default CA, we want PAI, and available CAs, we want PAI as well. And for available tokens, we want user generated. So click that one. And now we are done with our profile. So click Save. And now we can add an end entity for our first IoT device. So click Add End Entity. Profile should be DAC. And for username, I'm going to call this one DAC001. This is the first device. Select the password and remember it for later. And the common name, I will keep it simple, 001. And the vendor ID and the product ID are already here from the profile. Go ahead and click Add. So now our PKI is aware of our first IoT device. Now we can go back to the terminal. And from here, we can use OpenSSL to mimic the behavior of an IoT device. So the first command I'm going to run is OpenSSL ECParam gen key. So this generates a key pair. And the type here will be the P256 curve, which is probably familiar by now. And then I'm going to output these keys to a file. And then the second command is OpenSSL rec. And this is to make a certificate signing request. So I'm going to specify that I want to use the keys in the files that I just now created and an output file. And you can also specify a subject DN, but the EJBCA is going to let the subject DN in the end entity that we created take precedence over this one. So it's not strictly necessary. I'm gonna run this one. And then I can use cat and specify the CSR file that we just created. And cat I use just to get the certificate request. So I'm going to copy this one to the clipboard. And now I can head back to the admin web. So scroll down to RA web. Select enroll, use username. Here you can enter the one that we just created. Click check. Here in the text box, we can paste our certificate request and click download PEM. So now we've issued our very first DAC that is compliant with the Matter standard. We can go ahead and inspect it if we want. Here we can see the common name 001. For these other components, it looks a bit strange right now. We only see the IDs. So this is the vendor ID and the product ID. But since the Matter standard is quite new, the tools that we use to inspect certificates have not yet been updated with this standard. So that explains the weird looking IDs here. But everything else that we expect is in the certificate, including the keys and so on. So, as a final reminder, the practices in this video are not for production use. So for example, in a production environment, you would use a hardware security module to store your keys, both for the PAA and the PAI. And also the PAA would most likely be offline and air-gapped on a separate machine, and the PAI is on its own machine. But thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I hope to see you again. Bye.